Welcome to this edition of the Yahowah vlog. We're out at our ocean studio. It's a lovely day. Beautiful weather has returned to the Virgin Islands, and it's a pleasure to be able to share the ninth mizmor, our psalm, from Dowd, our king, both former and returning, with you. It begins to the enduring guide and everlasting director, HaShems, the continuously glorious, majestic conductor in every endeavor over an unlimited duration of time. And was written, at least the preamble now reads, upon the death of the son. La Muth La Ha Ben, over a child dying. A mizmor. Melody and lyrics of Dowd, the beloved. Dowd would experience the death of many children. The most egregious wasn't a son, but a daughter. Well, not excuse me. It was, I guess, it was a son. His eldest son raped his daughter, and his third born, Absalom, killed his firstborn. Pretty tragic experience. And also, we have the death of Bathsheba's son when both she and Dowd engaged in a really awful relationship. And it's the story that we have told over in the library studio pursuant to the last mashal. And so that was also a tragic moment in his life. And yes, he had to suffer the death of a son, but then that whole episode was so filled with angst and rebellion and hatred, really, towards God. That was a really bad episode. And then there's the death of Absalom, who Dowd lamented to a great extent. Absalom is the one who killed his firstborn son and who did so to avenge the rape of his half-sister, and then led a coup against Dowd, at which point, when he was killed by Joab, his lead general, Dowd cried bitterly over his death rather than celebrating the fact that a coup was over. Just a really an interesting period in Dowd's life, troubling period in Dowd's life. So we have four ways of looking at the death of a son. First, while the first of Dowd's physical bodies was long gone, having passed away, it was never relevant. His soul endures, and in the end, Dowd will return as in the physical realm, serving as Yah's right hand during the millennial celebration of Sukkah. He'll return as Elyon, the very hand and influence of God. And so while Dowd is the son of God, he never died. So this cannot speak of him in that sense. His body died fulfilling Passover. His body died at the end of his first of three lives as he was 70 years old. But his body was meaningless to him in all of those situations. So at this point, a physical death, in a physical form anyway, is now entirely optional. If you want to part with your physical body, you can, according to the equation of E equals MC². That formula, you can go back and forth between being a being comprised of light and one that has some modicum of your light energy converted into matter. And ultimately, Dowd's going to be able to convert some of his light into energy, from energy into matter at any time of his choosing, making a corporeal form available when needed, and while not otherwise a liability. Well, then there is Dowd's second Bashar body, which was paramount importance because it served as the Passover lamb by dying. This body is long remembered, but long gone, having been incinerated before the sun rose on Matzah and set on Pesach in accordance with the Torah's instructions. As for his soul, it was deployed, as we know, to fulfill Matzah and carry our guilt into Sheol, and then returned along with the Ruach Kodesh at the completion of Matzah to enable the promise of Bikurim. Well, then there's also the children of Yisrael, the sons of Jacob, and the heirs to the covenant. In all manner of speaking, they have died by the millions for having rejected Yahowah. And there was a time when Yahowah said that the sword will never depart from you. And fourth, of course, was one of the great heartaches of life that really anyone can suffer. And Dowd would suffer it indeed at least 3 times that we know of. And that is the loss of a child. And as I say, Dowd lost 3. His firstborn died on the 8th day. His secondborn was killed by his thirdborn so as to avenge the rape of his sister, and who was Dowd's eldest daughter. The third son was then killed for having led a coup d'etat against his father. I guess there was actually 4, because the fourth would be the son that he had through Bathsheba prior to Solomon being conceived and born. So this would have destroyed a lesser man. However, Dowd endured, largely because it drew him closer to Yah eventually, as he understood the matters of life and death, enabling God's Son to better empathize with his father over these rigors and the pain associated with them. So these are the lyrics. I express my appreciation. Yada. This is with the hey ending. It's essentially yod, which means hand, in a female, feminine sense was yada, or it can be perceived as associated with yada, knowing, the verb. So yada, I know, and therefore I am thankful, extolling what I understand. So yada is either an active feminine influence on a hand, or it is derived from the verb yada, to know and be familiar with. It was written in the Hiffle imperfect jussive, which means that it's a third-person expression of volition. To Yahowah, with my whole heart and my best judgment, I want to recount in writing, Shafar, I have chosen to quantify and record, to proclaim and inform, providing a permanent accounting of all of your wonderful deeds and amazing revelations, Pala, your marvelous and astonishing accomplishments, your awe-inspiring and fulfilling acts, your extraordinary and distinguishing characteristics. Mizmowr lyrics to sing, Psalm 9:1. So Dowd has risen to the occasion. He has affirmed the reason that Yahowah referred to him as his beloved son and his anointed Messiah, as well as king. His thoughts and his words were devoted to sharing what he had come to know about Yahowah. He was engaged in the most important and beneficial mission in the universe. And considering the fact that we know that Dowd had, 48 reasonably good years, and they were followed by a period of at least 14 years where some of that he was in the depths of depression. And I think certainly in the last 4 to 6 years of his life, following an intervention, he came back around. So this was likely written either before Dowd fell into the depths of depression, at 56 years old, or after he was released from it and recovered. One of those two. So, particularly relevant, especially in the age of social media video presentations, which we're doing right now, Dowd was committed to the written word. No doubt he had a singer's and an orator's voice, but nevertheless, he wrote the lyrics of his songs so that they would endure the test of time. Further, Dowd was the lead participant throughout the unification of Israel and during the fulfillment of the Mikra. He was always more than just a prophetic witness, although he was extraordinary in that role. When he chronicles the events transpiring during Pesach and 33 CE, he knows what he's talking about because he endured that pain. So this reads, I will rejoice. I will of my own volition delight, and I will be elated, even jubilant, expressing my admiration, celebrating with you. And I want to sing to your godly name. Mizmowr, Psalm 9:2. Dowd's clearly embracing Yahowah at this point in his life. It's either, as I say before, he descended into the alcohol-driven depression that spawned the ugliness of the Bathsheba incident, or it is after he recovered from it that he would have been in this mindset. Now, one of the things that I've come to love about our king is that he was not bashful in expressing his feelings. As frustrated as he often was with his fellow man, and sometimes even with God, he came to endure by loving Yahowah. And for all of these wonderful statements of that love, we know that there was mutual admiration. So, as we all know, in the 89th Mizmor, Dowd was said upon Yahweh's return that he would be Elyon, essentially all things pertaining to the hand and influence of God. And this was set in comparison to all of the most exalted of the earth. And here we find further affirmation that Elyon is one of Yahweh's titles. Dowd's use is consistent with what we find actually throughout the Torah. Most people, especially at the loss of a child, would either blame God and be embittered towards him, or believe that for this to occur, there must be no God at all. And yet Dowd searched for and found, then embraced the reason behind death and the solution for it that God had provided. We don't have to die when we die. Our souls can live on. Now, I've come to see life in this way, Dowd's way, which is one of the reasons I find his life and lyrics so illuminating, so inspiring. With the proper attitude and with sound thinking, we can learn and grow from, well, every experience, as eventually did Dowd, particularly the most difficult one. Now, according to many scholars, having respect for Yahweh's name precludes it from being spoken. And yet, how would that even be possible? Since no one had greater respect for Yahowah than Dowd, he routinely sang it aloud. Why would he have written it into the lyrics if it would serve no purpose? Do you think that God would have told us that Yahweh's name was too sacred to pronounce? If that were actually the case, do you think he would tell us, my name is Yahowah, but don't you dare say it? If you say it, you might mispronounce it, and that would really upset me. No, he doesn't say that at all. Like, when he chose a man to introduce his name to us, he chose a man who acknowledged that he had a speech impediment of some sort. That tells you everything you need to know about potentially mispronouncing it. And What God actually says is just the opposite. The third statement he wrote in stone is that anyone who negates the value of his name will never be forgiven. So, given the choice between Dowd's enthusiastic desire to convey Yahweh's name and today's religious assessment that it should not be or cannot be pronounced, who do you think is Sadak right? And who is Russia wrong? Now, Dowd's enemies are compared to those who are averse to Yahweh, threatening his people, or those who would deny what he has accomplished. They are typically religious, but often political. And in most every situation, God's foes, well, they were also opposed to the Son. So the Father's foes are the Son's adversaries. With the turning away of my enemies, those with animosity and rancor towards me, they will stumble back as they are expelled from your presence. To reject Dowd is to reject God. To reject God is to reject Dowd. Keep that in mind if you are adherent to Judaism or Christianity, because both reject everything Dowd represents. There is no Jesus without robbing Dowd of his accomplishments and acclaim. There is no Judaism without the same. Now, there is a day of reckoning, a time in which the dividing line between living in God's presence and being eternally banished will be determined by our love for Yahweh's name and our appreciation for what he and his Son have done for us. Upon their return, the souls of those who are not covenant will either be exterminated, expelled, or there is that mortal remnant that will receive the benefit of a second chance through the sacrifice of the Adamah Parah on Teruah. So there was something extraordinarily important articulated here that I suspect most everyone will have a tendency to move right past without notice. Even though I tried to attune everyone to it prior to and after Dowd's pronouncement. Those who are opposed to what the Son has accomplished, who are averse to him, are excluded from Yahweh's presence. They are permanently estranged with their souls, either annihilated or incarcerated, and neither are good options. And the reasons are many, beginning with Dowd's role through the Moedim. One cannot benefit from that which they deny, such that the realization that HaMashiach served as the Pesach El, opening heaven's door while extending our lives, is lost on them. His nephesh soul carried our guilt, this pervasive fungus of the people's propensity to contaminate themselves with religion and politics, into Sheol during Matzah, perfecting, if you will, certainly making not guilty the children of the covenant. As a result, those who acknowledge and accept what Father and Son have accomplished are prepared to enter Yahweh's presence and to be adopted into his family. That is how the three spring Mikre, Pesach, Matzah, and Bakodim enable the benefits of the covenant. All five of them. So Dowd epitomizes in much of his life Yisrael, and probably more so after his horrid affair with Bathsheba. And he is also, on the positive side, the exemplar of the covenant, of how we can be wrong and made right, how we can fall and be raised back up. And it is through him that the very covenant was established, according to God. To be averse to the covenant or to Dowd, well, that will exclude a soul from the presence of God, because he favors and cherishes his covenant and his Son above all others. Now, Dowd approached Yahweh intellectually, but also emotionally, even experimentally. He knew exactly what he was doing most of the time. And and why it was important. And he was fully cognizant, a great deal of his life, of what the result would be. He was a wholehearted participant and genuinely devoted to the relationship. And as such, he engaged doing what his father desired. And those who fail to appreciate this and misconstrue Dowd's life and the purpose of the covenant, well, they do so to their own detriment. Therefore, it would be fair to say that we approach Yahowah by what Moshe wrote and what Dowd has accomplished. They're hand in glove, aren't they? It is as it should be, really. As it was with Dowd, so can it be with us. Yahowah introduced himself to us in his Torah, and he proved his existence through his prophets. He has provided all of the information we need to exercise good judgment, to determine what is right and wrong about God. Now, this process is interactive, with Yahowah revealing and us observing and responding. Both have to happen. God's done his part. Now it's up to you. Now, Yahowah designated and equipped us for this purpose. The 9th Mizmor reads, "For you have acted upon and engaged in my decision-making process regarding my means to resolve disputes." Asha means to act, to engage, to do, to work. And misvot is a compound of my, to ponder the implications of shafat, which is to decide, to exercise good judgment. And my ability to judge and to be judgmental, distinguishing between right and wrong. Wah den ane. We know of the man named Daniel. Well, Daniel would be my God is judgmental. Den means to judge, to distinguish between right and wrong, to differentiate between true and false. God here, or certainly Dowd, is saying that if you want to have a relationship with God, you ought to judge. If you do not judge, you will be judged. It's the opposite of what is presented in the Christian New Testament. He goes on to say, and you have established the approach to the seat of honor, the kishe. The seat of honor is the mercy seat of the Ark of the Covenant. It is also Dowd's throne, and it will be Dowd's throne forevermore. The idea that you have restored and established, that is from Yashab, which is deduced from the remnant found in Cave 11 of Qumran. So you have established the approach to the seat of honor, the throne. You have decided and judged correctly. Shafat, Shadak, you have rendered the right decision. You have been just, rational, and fair. This is also from 11 QPS, where Shafat is second person perfect. It's Mizmowr lyrics to saying 9:4. So this is about acting upon our best judgment, us making informed and rational decisions. This was and will always be the way that the ultimate judge will render our fate. And if we come to know him, listen to what he has to say, observe what he has written, process it intelligently, act upon it, then rather than being judged, he'll say, hey, you want to sit next to me here on the bench? There is no evidence against you. Obviously, all of it was taken into Sheol to be deposited by Dowd. And we can just smile and cozy up and say, that'll be great. The path to knowing Yahowah, therefore, and understanding what he is offering and what he expects in return is not through obedience. It is not through faith. Yahowah provided his Torah, teaching, his naby, prophets, and mizmor, songs, so that we could be thoughtful and discerning in our response to him. As a result, the process to the desired result necessitates listening before speaking, observing, before engaging. The pronouns, I think, are particularly telling in this statement. Dowd used you 3 times, indicating that he is addressing Yahowah, showing that God acted and engaged based upon Dowd's judgment, that God established the seat of honor, and that he rendered the right decision. Me was used twice, speaking of himself in ways that we are more accustomed to seeing God. For example, it is Dowd's mishpat decision-making process regarding the means to resolve disputes between God and man that Yahowah is acting upon. This means that Dowd was far more than just the Passover lamb, since the Father was enabling their combined plan. Dowd had thought it through. He was determined that by his participation, the most beneficial result would be achieved. Now, this did not come to him until very late in his life. And so he's being highly reflective at this point based upon what he had learned. And I think, actually, while I had previously thought that the 89th Mizmor was written in year 3000 Yah, serving as the cornerstone of that year, of the exact same amount of time from Eden and back to Eden, right there in the heart, 3,000 years into the 6,000-year plan. I no longer think that's the case. In fact, I'm rather sure of it. The 89th Mizmor was a collaborative effort between Ethan Ezraki and Yahowah, whereby it was used to restore Dowd's relationship with Yahowah, so that he would know exactly who he is and what he was to achieve. And I think it was delivered at least 4 years and maybe 6 and 8 years prior to the end of Dowd's first of 3 lives, and that this Mizmor would therefore have been written after it, so that Dowd had a chance to think these things through. He now knew God's plan. He had been presented exactly who he was, what he would achieve, why it was important, and he had bought into it. He was transformed. Now, this realization is underscored by the fact that Yahowah's participation was engendered by his son's ability to make informed and rational decisions when confronted with the evidence. And boy, was he ever. I can't wait to share my most recent translation of the 89th Mizmor with you, as well as the identity of Ethan Ezraki. Now, in particular, Yahowah responded to Dowd's DN regarding the mishpat. They were of like mind at this point. God's means to exercise good judgment and the process Dowd was now using to make sound and rational decisions, they were in sync. As a consequence, God Yashab established the proper approach to the keshe, the seat of honor and authority he had fashioned for his son. We are told many times that the keshe is Dowd's. It is his seat of honor. It will be for all time, for all people, for everywhere, and throughout eternity. And this keshe, this seat of honor, I have deduced, is in fact the mercy seat of the Ark of the Covenant. That's why I have come to understand that the wings of the cherubim are positioned the same way they were in the most set apart room where the Ark itself was positioned, so that you have a wing that comes out this way and then one that comes this way on the back right hand corner, and on the left hand corner it would be like this, a wing that comes out this way, and the right wing of that cherubim that would serve as the back of the mercy seat, leaving the whole front of it like a chair. And it would be very much like this chair, in the sense that I have arms, probably below the camera level here, but I have arms that come out as armrests, and I have a back that would be that the wings would form the armrest and they would meet in the back. I think that is how it is designed. I look forward to seeing it again soon. It'll be brought out of Yirmiya's grotto and placed under the tent of the restoring witness on the Temple Mount somewhere after the Passover in 2030, which I think is the 18th of April in that year. And it will be repositioned not only as Dowd's throne, but as the mercy seat to be anointed with the bull's blood and then the goat on Kippurim when Dowd returns. So this is the very seat that is, from God's perspective, going to be as brilliant as the sun. So Dowd acknowledges that his father's approach is rational and fair, something that he had come to understand after the presentation of the 89th Mizmor. Now, if I may digress a moment, I have found it curious that Dowd, approaching under the title of Gabriel, God's most capable and courageous man, provided the full spectrum of what he would accomplish by fulfilling the spring mikre, the invitations to meet, Chag Matzah. When these fulfillments would occur, he told us the exact date that he would fulfill Chag Matzah. And he did so in Babylon. He did so actually accompanied by Michael, one who is right about God, in what was probably 555 BCE. Now, he could have done so through one of his mizmor written around 1000 BCE and avoided the trip, but that wouldn't be the approach that God wanted them to take. So he inserted Dowd and Michael to inform Daniel so he could write it down and that we could know exactly how the future would transpire. Now, since Yahowah was speaking directly to and through the prophets like Yeshayah, Hosea, Yirmiyah, Zechariah, Malachi, it is self-evident why Dowd would been in a very similar situation to them. And clearly, since he was fulfilling the Moedim, he was announcing what would occur. And when he met with Daniel, he was in a position to say exactly what would transpire. It dawned on me while reading Den to judge, because it is the base of, as I have said, of Daniel's name, God judges. It recognizing that Babel is the very thing that we must walk away from before we can be invited into the Bereth covenant. It remains the very place that God cannot appear or be seen. And one of the things I've come to appreciate is Leah and her team's ability to do promotions and branding for the site. I don't know if you've seen it yet, but the video of Sarah and Abraham clicking their heels as they're departing Babylon is a genuine hoot. So anyway, Daniel and Yehudim in Babylon were in the very place that Yahowah will be withdrawing his people. And so Dowd was offered the perfect opportunity to explain how that would occur when he visited. And he delivered the message personally. He was actually described as a man, as was Michael, his compatriot. And they presented the prophecy. Michael explained it. Dowd presented it in such a way that allowed everyone to understand how these next 7 years are going to play out. And even the date that set the clock ticking 2,000 years ago when Dowd fulfilled Chag Matzah in 33 CE, which was year 4000 Yah. And it also speaks to the timing that the two witnesses will arrive to herald his return. So moving on to the next statement, the Goyim Gentiles that Yahowah continually rebukes and reprimands, but not because of their ethnicity, but because they have a propensity to be religious and political. And he calls them foreigners because he doesn't want their religion and their politics to seep into the culture of Israel, which of course it did. I don't think there's any ethnicity on earth that is as religious or political as Jews. So unfortunately, they did not heed God's message. But it is now that they are confronted with the Hellenized Jesus Christ over Dowd and his people, the Israelites, where they stole their birthright. They stole all of the promises. They stole their inheritance. They stole their Messiah. And based on this and their claims that Jews killed their God, they stole their lives, their freedoms, their everything. So the notion, of course, is that Christianity is based upon is ignorant. It's irrational. And that's, of course, why it takes faith to believe it. It is also hypocritical and irresponsible. Many, if not most, of these foreigners were ever ready to complain that Jews, who they protest are acting illegally and do not belong, are ruining their country and trying to take it from them. Now, never mind that their forefathers stole it from the native peoples. Nevertheless, as foreigners themselves, these Gentiles want us to believe that they are heirs to Israel and to God's promises, although God begs to differ. And yet they hate the very race that provided not only the Passover lamb, but the entirety of Yahowah's witness. If these preposterous notions were not interwoven to form a religion, well, no one would believe a word of any of it. Now, this is among the many reasons why Yahowah is forever associating Goyim with Russia, with being wrong. It is why God is disapproving of and will censure so many Gentiles, although there will be many that are brought into Jerusalem in the end. It is why the foreign souls who have been misled and who are mistaken will be exterminated on that day on Teruah, and their names and reputations will be forgotten forevermore. Now, this is sobering. It is also absolute and irrefutable proof that the Christian New Testament's insistence that the promises Yahowah made to Israel have been given to a Gentile church. Indeed, every aspect of replacement theology has no basis in reality. The foundational claim of the Christian religion is torn asunder by what follows. You will rebuke and reprimand, ga'ar. In that instant, you will have expressed your disapproval with the conviction because it is time to insult and censure the Goyim, the Gentiles, these non-Israelites. You will in a moment in time expel and exterminate those who are misleading and mistaken, those who are guilty, those who are wrong. Their names will be blotted out forevermore, including their testimony. And with that, I have to pause and say, I was wrong. There weren't four sons that, well, there were four sons that Dowd lost. His first son died within 8 days of birth. His next son, the living son to adulthood, was murdered by Absalom, another son. And Absalom was then killed, his son in the rebellion. And then Dowd also lost the son that he had with Bathsheba. But he's not and would not celebrate any of those. And so here I'm sharing this with you, and I'm wondering, what in the world is the real inspiration for this? Because Dowd was angry with God over each of those deaths. He lamented them. They didn't bring him closer to God. He did not celebrate them. He did not speak kind words unto God in their aftermath. He acted like everybody else and blamed God. So what in the world could this be about if it is the death of a son and it is to be celebrated? I know. How about you, Rich? God has many sons, and one of them has been at his side for a very long time. He first gathered him in 5,400 years ago. That was a man known as Enoch. Chanok is his actual name. Somebody who was prepared, deployed, who was persistent in his job. And God has brought that same soul back a number of times. The very soul of Enoch returned as my Dowd when helping Moshe make it through the liberation process. He likely came to coordinate the assemblage of Hebrews that had already turned on Moshe and wouldn't listen to him, so that they were not fighting him at the moment, and then would have helped orchestrate the proceedings pursuant to Pesach and Matzah leading to Bikurim. Little details like where did they get the lambs? Where did they get the hyssop to smear the blood on the door? Who provided all of that instruction to them and made certain that they did it as God had requested? And we know that just days out of Choreb, when Moshe had his meltdown, it was Eldad and Medad that were presented to Moshe, such that he heard that they were filled with the Spirit and they were speaking on behalf of God. And when Yosha ben Nun said, "What do you want me to do?" And Moshe says, "Well, I don't know." He didn't say, "I don't know them." He didn't say, "Who are these guys?" He said, "No, this is something we ought to celebrate." He knew them quite well. They had been together for some time. The third deployment of the soul that is known as Enoch, Chanok, is given two different names, both names really just descriptive of the role that he would play. Obed-Edom, and then Ethan Ha Ezraki. And we're going to consider that insertion of this man and the purpose and how it would affect Dowd and therefore the future of the world, the fulfillment of Pesach, Matzah, and Bikurim, God's very return, the salvation of the planet. In our program beginning this evening at 5 o'clock Eastern Time, our family hour. But that's not what this is all about, but it gets you up to the point where that same soul was reinserted here now 71 years ago and has developed into the man you're listening to today. I will leave this planet as did Enoch, as did Elijah, with other covenant members here on Shabuah, either this year or next. But when I return, I too am a son of God. This didn't say the firstborn son of God, which is Dowd. It's the death of a son. I am that son. I am the son whose death is to be celebrated. And it, again, is my physical body that will be given for the very reasons that we're listening to here. And at the time that all of this will take place, because there's only one moment where this takes place, and that is during Teruah in 2033. That is the time that Yah, for the first and only time, rebukes and reprimands the Goyim. That is the time and the only time that he will, at a moment on Teruah, expel and exterminate those who are misleading and mistaken, the guilty and wrong among the Goyim. It is the time that their names will no longer be remembered, when they will be blotted out. And so the death of a son that he is speaking of so gloriously, so joyful, is mine. And although I serve as his segregate father, he knows that I too have a role with God, one that is has developed over 5,400 years, and that upon my death, great joy is going to break out, not because the covenant family or God are going to say, "Oh God, that guy's finally gone. Thank God we got rid of him." No, it's because it's the sacrifice of the Adam of Parad purges the mortal remnant of Yisrael of the religiosity, and it's all in anticipation of 10 days later, Dowd returns as the Messiah and King with his father, with Yahowah, and that 5 days after that, we are all with this mortal remnant that has been spared by that sacrifice. We're all allowed back into the earth, restored into the conditions of Gan Eden. And well, Eden means great joy. That's why he's singing this so joyously. Everything is restored. So that is what he is talking about. That there will be a moment in time where all of this will take place exactly as it has been laid out. We will finally rid the world of the religions of Peter and Paul, of Akiba, Akiba and Maimonides, of Muhammad, of Karl Marx and Lenin and Mao and Stalin. That'll all be gone. There will be no more Christians, no Haredi, no Muslims, no Marxists. And the conditions that existed in Eden, great joy, will be returned. And that is what God is addressing at this very moment. It is, with the, quite honestly, it'll be the greatest show on earth. There'll be nothing anywhere close to what we'll witness on that day. God's not only going to bring a remnant of appropriately attitude, the mindset, goyim, into Jerusalem to be purged so they can work during the millennial Shabbat, but also the Jews who are not overtly religious or political that can be purged of that stigma. They're brought in. They all receive the benefit of the sacrifice of the Adam of Parah. And while that is occurring so that they're cleansed and prepared to be in God's presence and prepared for Dowd's return as king, God is removing all traces of religion and politics and militarism and conspiracy and anti-Semitism from the planet and terraforming the earth back into the conditions of Eden, all on this day. Well, taking all of those who have come against Israel, incarcerating them in Sheol, and those who don't have the wherewithal to benefit from the sacrifice of the Adam of Parah, they're being incinerated. That is the nature of this rather extraordinary day, and that's why Dowd is celebrating it. And it is as it should be, and it is as it will be. Now, in this statement, every verb was scribed in the perfect, meaning that there is a time when this will come, and we know that it will all manifest over the period of 24 hours from sunset on Teruah, the Friday evening, the beginning of a Shabbat of 23 September of 2033, running through sundown on the 24th, the Shabbat of that day, even to the backdrop of a full solar eclipse. And that is when the memory of all of those who have come against Israel will be blotted out. And it is an everlasting promise that God has made for us. So the days of the overtly political and religious, conspiratorial and anti-Semitic are numbered, at least here on earth. The adversary will cease and be finished. It'll be the demise of not only Satan, but the one he has possessed at this time, which is Donald Trump. In a state of ruin, deserted and wasted forever. Additionally, you will uproot and destroy cities and shrines and temples, such that the remembrance of them ceases to exist. Well, we have another affirmation that the death of the son he is celebrating is that of the Adama Para Yada, the Nakar, the Choder. And he is, as he gives his life, and Yahowah does all these marvelous, miraculous things around the celebration of the sacrifice of the Adama Para, which is orchestrated by Elia on his return, then God is going to cause all remembrance of the cities and shrines and the like to disappear. Now, will there be some cities that remain? Maybe. I think there'll be so few people that there won't be a need to be concentrated in cities. I think we'll be in far more rural in terms of the space that we have to spread out on the earth. I know, as for me, no chance. I'm going to move into a city. I really like what you can see. This is what I like: the great open spaces all around us, and that is what will remain, because the cities, the shrines, and the temples are going to be uprooted and destroyed. And God must do that to return the earth back to the conditions of Eden. And the first act in that regard is that it is Hasatan, through his corporeal manifestation, Donald Trump, who will arrive in Israel. I think it's the 29th of January in Ramadan during the year 2030. He will make his pronouncement that he is a god on the Ides of March of that year. We arrive then in April 18th on Passover. And over the next 3.5 years, it's Satan versus the witnesses. And of course, far more people will be allied with and supportive of and championing Satan than either Elia or myself. And ultimately, this will end in the final sacrifice, the sacrifice of the Adama Para, this bloody red man of the earth who is a productive bull from God's metaphorical perspective. And they're going to crush my body. It's going to be a gruesome sacrifice. But God then is going to use that sacrifice as a burnt offering, where he's going to release copious amounts of water from underneath the Temple Mount, and the combination of the cleansing waters and these searing flames of the fire, and the all mixed with the ash and its cleansing properties. All of those who he has gathered in Jerusalem around the Temple Mount are going to be purged of their politics and religiosity, so that they're prepared to enter this restoration of the earth into the conditions of Eden. It's going to be a marvelous experience. And all around us, it'll be fires incinerating all of those who have come against Israel, all traces of religion and politics, conspiracy and anti-Semitism, militarism. And in this place, you're going to witness God literally transforming the earth into a perfect and pristine environment. It's going to be extraordinary. It's only 7.5 years from this time. So that's what Dowd's celebrating here. Isn't it amazing? Live and learn. You would never have known this simply translating a mizmor 10 years ago, even. In fact, 5 years ago, I probably would not have been able to do this. And I translated the first volume. This is the last chapter of the first volume of Coming Home. I think I probably would have done this translation and written this analysis, every bit of 10 years ago now, maybe further, could have been 12. And it wasn't until 2 years ago that we began to learn of the story of the Adama Para. And now every day, literally every day, is a godsend of insights that prepare you to be able to explain what it is that we're seeing, what it is we're hearing from God. So for the earth to return to the conditions enjoyed in Eden, the adversary who encouraged Adam and Chava to rebel against Yahowah must be stopped. And his last move is to strike out at God's representative, the man that he chose long ago as Chanuk, who he has redeployed over time. And he's going to lash out and take that man's physical life, which is meaningless to him, meaningful symbolically, the way that God's going to use it as the sacrificial offering. But it is a body that is readily discarded and replaced, and that's really all I'm offering in this, other than the willingness to endure the process and to trust God through the process and to realize all the good that's going to come as a result of this. And through the ages, we've come to know much more about HaSatan, how he manifests himself in religion, how here he is literally embodying Donald Trump. I came to recognize that a year and a half ago and made a series of pronouncements about it, wrote a book. It's the most recent book that's been published. It's called Time of Trouble. It's the volume 9 of Yahowah. It's available free at Yahowah.com, as are all 35 books there. And I was able to prove from the prophets, the Toraless one, this great betrayer, the man that's going to destroy his country, Israel, and the world, is in fact Donald Trump. And which means that he's not going to die anytime soon, as much as we'd probably all like that to occur. But, when I came up with that estimate regarding him, based upon the prophetic portrayal, where the timing and his attitude made it, just absolutely irrefutable that he's the man fulfilling this prophecy, that I was reluctant to share it, not because it wasn't obvious. The prophets made it obvious, but because he was not only 79 years old, and I didn't see how in the world a man that took that poor care of himself would even last another 8 years at the time, now just over 7. But also, when you take a person who's just an ordinary egotistical sexual pervert that is elected president, not that there's a whole lot of those out there, and you say this individual is not only demon possessed, they are satanic. This individual is going to be the single worst person who's ever lived. Worse than Hitler, worse than Stalin, worse than Mao, worse than Tamerlane, Genghis Khan, Kublai Khan, any of the pharaohs, any of the Caesars, Caligula, Nero, you name it. This is going to be the single worst human who has ever lived, because of the demon possession, particularly satanic possession at this time. And, you realize that it was Christian MAGAs that elected him president and that are worshiping him as a Messiah. You're just looking at this and said, oh my goodness, it is exactly as I had thought. When I wrote my the 5 volumes called Twistianity, it used to be called Questioning Paul, it became obvious to me, because Paul was demon possessed and he was political and also religious, and he was a confabulator. There was no correlation between what he said and reality, just like Donald Trump, and exceedingly egotistical, and by his own admission, a sexual pervert, that there was going to be very little difference in the personality of Paul, and then Muhammad, who I wrote 5 books about as well, who was all of those things and worse, and the person who would be known as the Antichrist, this Toraless betrayer, who now I know to be Donald Trump. And when I made that pronouncement in November, over a year ago, I had no idea that he would be this bad this soon, or there would be such overwhelming evidence that it's true, or that Christian MAGAs in spite of all that he has said and done, would continue to support him as if he were a messianic figure. But it's all worked out exactly as the prophets foretold. They have never been wrong. So all of these individuals that have been inspired by him through their religious, that'd be all Muslims, all practitioners of the Haredim strain of Judaism and Muslims, they're all going to go, as well as all Marxists. They are incompatible with the conditions that God foresees for Eden going forward. And therefore, to transform the earth, he has to purge the earth prior. So they had a bad run, some 6,000 years of mischief and mayhem, but it cannot continue. And by the way, that all was by design, because it was actually God who caused the fall of man, because Adam failed in the things that God was looking for. He was not particularly observant. He was fairly lethargic and didn't engage and wasn't responsive. And when he made a mistake, he doubled down and wallowed in it, as opposed to getting up, recognizing he had erred and learned from it and going forward. None of those things were true. So God realized that in a cloistered, sheltered environment, he was never going to get any better. And so it was no point in going on. He caused the fall of man to give us 6,000 years to at least get our act together, to the point there would be some of us that are willing to do those three things that God is looking for. Shouldn't be asking all that much: to be observant, pay attention to what he has to say and what's going on around us, to respond to him so that we engage and make our life, this world, and the relationship with God better, and who shows some fortitude so that when we make a mistake, we correct it and move on, just as I'm doing right here. And so that we enjoy actually having the opportunity to do that, because it shows that we're growing, we're learning. And if we stumble and fall, we get back up. And if we notice somebody who is part of the covenant that stumbles and falls, as did Dowd, that we give them a helping hand as well. And so we had 6,000 years to get to this point. There is enough of us that are going to make the Shabuah harvest productive. And then we're going to come back and help the mortal remnant of Yisrael demonstrate that they also can be trusted, so that God can remove us from this planet, envelop us in light and energy, and go off and explore the stars in a manner where we know that he can trust us to pay attention and do the right thing. So then Yahowah, he lives forevermore, establishing the eternal dwelling place for his seat of honor on behalf of those who experience and exercise good judgment regarding the way to resolve disputes. Mizmowr 9:7. Yes, this is the happily ever after moment where Yahowah and those who have been brought to him, we not only get to live forevermore, but the very seat of honor that Dowd will be occupying as king is going to be radiant and brilliant in our presence as the Kaporah, the mercy seat of the Ark of the Covenant. And then all of us are going to be in this marvelous abode that God has created. This is incredibly marvelous dwelling place that is established here on earth and then in the universe thereafter. It's going to be this ultimately extraordinary circumstance. So after the adversary is gone, the fun begins with evil expunged. The children of the covenant, will camp out with our Father, as will the mortal remnant, who will have a chance to teach, guide, and lead by example. And we're not going to have to worry about snakes lurking in the grass. All the while, we have been afforded yet another affirmation that, the seat of honor awaits Dowd's permanent presence on it, and an audience of those who, along with him, ultimately come to exercise good judgment. So God is really smart, and he doesn't seem interested in wasting time surrounded by a bunch of dummies, and therefore we all must think our way to him. And while they will be forgotten, they will not be forgiven. The religious will be held accountable for robbing so many souls of the opportunity to live, and others of a life worth living. This continues to read, then he himself will execute justice on this perverse and confused world, doing so correctly and fairly, judging the nations and the people who are religious and political in a straightforward and equitable manner in conformance with the established standard. This is Psalm 9:8. And here, I have some additional knowledge and have come to realize that Yahweh doesn't do anything himself. And so when he says he himself here, the likelihood is it's not Yahweh by himself. Yahweh chooses to engage with us through us. He chose to fulfill Pesach, Matzah, and Bakurim through Dowd. He will fulfill Shabuah and Teruah and the approach to Kippurim through Yada, his Nakar. And it is Dowd who is king of forevermore during Sukkah. He spoke through the prophets. When he tried to speak directly to us, it turned out very poorly, and he says, I won't do that again. So he is going to judge those who have been counterproductive the same way he has done everything else. And it will be through those that he has chosen to accomplish his means. And in this regard, it isn't going to be Dowd. I mean, he's actually saying he himself, so it's somebody else. And if we pay attention to the song, the person that's going to have this responsibility, now acting under the tutelage of Yahweh, under the guidelines of Yahweh, doing Yahweh's will, but it's going to be that son who has passed on this day, who will be brought back to life, of course, immediately, because his soul will continue. And that particular individual knows Yahweh's standard, has spent a lot of time with God, and is exceedingly judgmental, which will probably work in this particular case. So we have considered these revelations, which indicate that Yahweh will delegate the business of judgment. We normally would have thought, and I would have thought, and actually wrote 10, 12 years ago, that it'd be delegated to Dowd, but that's not the case. Now, you can pretend, okay, God's going to delegate to Dowd, he's king, and the king is going to delegate because, well, kings don't do that kind of business. They have teams of people who do, and that's going to be the case here. The firstborn is going to give the job to the otherborn, is the way it's going to work out. So we're going to find that this will be the fate of the Leom, the wayward nations. And when judged, there is no favorable outcome. It's one of two, actually, it's one of three eventualities when judged. You're either judged and it's determined that you were the victim of religion and politics, and you were not a promoter of it, nor did you victimize others through it, and your soul simply ceases to exist. Normally, that would be most people. Towards the end, I'm not sure that'll be the most, but it'll be a significant group. The second is those who were deliberately misleading. They promoted religion, they promoted politics, anti-Semitism, conspiracies. They caused others to miss the way to God and harmed God's people. They will be sent to Sheol. And they, now there's no tortures in Sheol. It's no fires either. It is just a perpetual place where there is no escape, and where souls will remain forever estranged from the rest of us, so they can't bother us. And then there is a third group. And that third group will also end up in Sheol, but not immediately. It will be, in their case, they will be determined that they have been so egregious and caused so much pain that those that they tortured and robbed and beat and did all manner of horrible things, whether it be through things like the Inquisition or like the Holocaust, or during that first 100 years of Islam, where 200 million people were killed. robbed, raped, and abused, that those who perpetrated those crimes will have earned their recompense of having those that they abused have closure, so that the abused can be assured that those who robbed them of their freedoms and then their lives and who treated them so egregiously are getting what they deserved. And so there will be a sevenfold retribution for all of those people prior to even being sent to Sheol. So that is the process. It's going to be aided and abetted by Yahweh's Malach, and the Ruach will be ever present, and so it will be just, it will be fair, it will be appropriate, but it will also be dealt with in the manner that I have shared. So indeed, ours is a perverse and confused world, one and that a perfect being, if there, well, I'm not even sure God's perfect. He's marvelous and wonderful and brilliant and right and generous and rational and compassionate. He is powerful, so many wonderful things. Perfect would be boring, because then there would be no chance for him to grow, to become even more than he is, and that's the only way you can be infinite, is to constantly be growing and improving. And I know that he doesn't want perfection in us either. He's looking for the things that I have mentioned previously: being observant, being responsive, and being reliable, being foremost among them. But anyway, for God to even project his nephesh here and spend time with us, camping out with us, all of this trash has to be gone. It has to be discarded. So therefore, Yahweh exists as a safe and secure place to dwell. For those who have been harassed, afflicted, and slandered, a safe and secure place of refuge as troubling times approach. The troubling times that are approaching is the time of Yisrael's troubles. They will begin here in less than 100 days on the 22nd of May, 2026. And they will last just over 7 years. I think it's 7 years and 4 months, concluding on Teruah, when all of those events that I have already spoken of will transpire in 2033, which is year 6,000 Yah. And the only way to avoid any of this is, well, the best way is to go to Yahweh, for as he is providing a safe place. But that means you'll need to attend the Shabuah harvest. And the only way to attend the Shabuah harvest is to understand, and then accept the 5 conditions of the covenant and receive the benefits of the covenant by understanding and attending the Yahweh's Moed Mikre, Pesach, Matzah, Bakurim in particular, Shabuah, Teruah, Kippurim, and Sukkah. And that requires many things, knowing and loving Yahweh's name, coming to know Dowd's role in fulfilling these events, having an appreciation of the Torah as teaching, knowing the conditions of the covenant, knowing how they're fulfilled through the Moed Mikre. These are all very important concepts for us to appreciate and capitalize upon if you're going to be part of that group. And then you need, if you're going to be made eternal and empowered by Yahweh, you not only have to show that you were willing to be observant in this way and willing to respond as a result, but that you can be reliable, so that you're devoted to doing what needs to be done. So this safety in Yahweh is not universal. There will be far fewer than 1 in a million people that will avail themselves of this particular harvest, with none being religious or overtly political. And even among Yisrael and Yehudah, it will be a very, very few, respectively, because most who are going to benefit for what's going to occur will not benefit until such time as we approach Teruah, where God brings them into Yisrael and they're purged by the sacrifice of the Adamah Parah, and then ultimately enter the millennial kingdom as the earth is returned to the conditions of Eden. Now, fictitious gods, you must know, are highly unreliable. The real one can be trusted, and that is not true with the Jesuses or the HaShems or the Allahs of man's making. Then those who know. This is yada. It was revealed as a participle, which means it's a title and a name just as much as a verb. So those who know yada, those who are made aware, recognize, and respect yada, becoming acquainted and familiar after having been shown, and to acknowledge and understand your name, they will trust and rely upon you because of this. And indeed, you have not and will not abandon or forsake those who seek you, Yahowah. Now, it's interesting, of course, that Yada was the name that I operated in for the 10 years before God decided that it wasn't appropriate to be anonymous anymore. He does not do anonymous. People that he speaks through, he acknowledges them prophetically. And yet Yada was the name that I had chosen for all of this time. And as it would transpire, the name, which means to know, became a title and a name. And it was this same fellow that reintroduced Yahweh's name to the world. He was the first to determine how it was properly pronounced and prove it. You can read that proof in the first volume of An Introduction to God, again at yadayah.com. And again, all free, yadayah.com, An Introduction to God, Volume 1. I prove the proper pronunciation of Yahweh's name. And I demonstrate that a respect and reverence for Yahweh's name, a love for Yahweh's name, is the essential first step in developing a relationship with him. So these are all things that were properly attributed to Yada. You can look at any one of these books. This happens to be one from that first series of An Introduction to God. This is Volume 3, but they're all presented under this title, Yada, to know Yahowah. And so that is what this says, Yada, Yahowah. Worth the read, but only if your soul matters to you. So the benefits that we have been discussing, they await those seeking Yahowah, and they are not afforded to any others. And that is going to exclude all Christians, Haredi, Muslims, and Hindus, as well as Marxists. At the very least, those who seek to know the living and true God must do so by name, and that is the very, very least. There is no approaching God without respecting his name. And of course, there is no merit whatsoever, and it's actually a liability to know and speak the name of Jesus, Allah, HaShem, the Lord, or any of these. It all comes down to Yada, Yahowah. His Torah is the place to find Yahweh, to come to know him, to appreciate what he is offering, and to understand what he is requesting in return. The only question is really one of desire. Do you have the want to? Do you care about what's best for you, your soul, and those you love? Are you willing to invest the time to learn the truth? Are you willing to engage and help others after you? Are you willing to earn God's trust? Are you sufficiently rational to accept Yahweh's offer once you are aware of it and you respond to it? You should want to sing, this says again, to Yahowah. Ah, what a wonderful close. You should want to sing to Yahweh, who establishes a dwelling place on Zion, along the signs posted along the way. Of your own volition, choose to report among the people and family. As done. Mizmowr lyrics to sing, Psalm 9:11. So, first of all, we'll find the covenant home on the summit of that ridge line of Zion, which is Moriah and the Temple Mount. And it is along that ridge line between the city of Dowd and Dowd's home and Yahweh's covenant family home at the top of Mount Moriah that these signs are posted along the way that tell us the way to come home. And God is going to establish his ultimate dwelling place right there with us during the millennial Shabbat, as the clutter of the Temple Mount and the Islamic scars are removed. Initially, the tent of the restoring witness with the Ark of the Covenant will be placed there once the rubbish is cleansed away. And then after that time, we should expect to see upon Dowd's return the ultimate family home built likely out of light and energy. This is what awaits those who embrace Yahowah's name and accept the terms and conditions of the covenant. But as I have said, God wants more from us than just to know what he is offering and expects in return and act upon it. He wants us to choose to engage, to make the world better, to be about the family business, which means you should choose to report among the people and the family what he has done. Whether what he has done is Dowd, Yahowah, or this son who is offered on this day, it all matters. It's all a collaborative effort. And this is the prime objective. It's not just knowing the truth, but it's engaging and making a difference in our world, making a contribution. So when you meet Yahowah, you don't feel like, a deadbeat, that you were just nothing but pure gratitude on his, or pure work on his part, where he did all of it and you're just there by a thread. Don't you want to be able to show up and with God, knowing that you made a contribution, with God smiling and saying, that was really some good work you did there. I appreciate it. Look at all of these additional souls that are here because you reported this news, because you engaged, because you made a difference, because you showed me that you wanted to be part of this family and contribute to it, which is why I trust you to be here with me now. So it's the desire to sing and share what we have come to know. And it should flow out of us like a spring of living waters. It is why these words now appear before your eyes. So no matter how majestic the name, how melodious the song, how marvelous the lyrics, how lovely the home, how magnanimous the deeds, or how compelling and beneficial the report, if you don't acknowledge and accept the offer, then it is all for naught, at least for the recalcitrant troll soul. So it's important that you not only embrace the name of God, the sacrifice of his son, and what's going to transpire between now and his return, but all of the lyrics that Yahowah has provided for us are reinforcing, edifying, enhancing, empowering. And we should not only accept them, know them, appreciate them, grow from them, but also share them. It's important to know that Yahowah has but one home on earth. It is Tsiyon. It's the ridgeline that runs along the crest of Moriah from Dowd's residence to the summit. If you're looking for God, do not bother with the Vatican, with Mecca, or America. You will not find him there unless you're searching within the Torah. If you are not already on the right side of these words, well, I hope you consider them again until you are. If you're ready, then as we approach this next statement, be mindful of the fact that God, any God who would forgive and then forget the circumstances surrounding those who have horrifically abused his children, torturing and killing them, is neither just nor compassionate, neither fair nor loving. And since Yahowah is all of these things, he will do the right thing, which is to expose, judge, condemn, and punish those who have tormented his people, even if he does it through a segregate, a person of his choosing. Along with those who have encouraged them, there will be recompense. Indeed, he who accounts for blood is mindful of them, and he will not overlook or forget the cry of distress and the screams of pain, or the misery that has been imposed upon the afflicted. Lyrics to sing, Psalm 9:12. This is essential. It's important that you know that there is more to judgment than the simple heaven and hell. In fact, as I have shared, very few people are going to heaven. Hell up to this point has been fairly sparsely populated. Most people's have their souls simply extinguished upon their death, no reward, no penalty. As we move towards this, through these next 7 years, it's going to be really brutal, and a higher percentage are going to earn Sheol. But it isn't just for the guilty, for those who have promoted religion and politics. It isn't just the choice of the extermination of their soul, or the incarceration of their soul, because God's going to remember. He's going to make certain that there's recompense for the most egregious abusers. And in their trials, we're going to see those that they victimized get closure by knowing that those who tortured them were ultimately held accountable. Should you have wondered if God has witnessed the agonizing pain inflicted by, well, a Catholic inquisitioner, a European concentration camp guard, or the Islamic terrorist? Well, now you know. And if you were concerned that the governments, religious institutions, and citizenry that justified it, that capitalized upon it, and allowed them to get away with murder would be held accountable, well, your mind can be put at ease. That will be the case. While it is politically incorrect, it is absolutely true. To love, we must know what, when, why, and how to hate. One cannot be merciful without opposing that which is contrary to our Creator's testimony and opposed to our best interests. To engage in this regard, we must know right from wrong and appreciate the power of words, allowing Yahweh's testimony to work as it has always been intended. Once we have done as compassion requires, we ought to trust Yahweh to complete the job, doing as he has promised. There is life in these words. Christians are wont to see their Jesus returning in a flowing white robe with outstretched hands, welcoming the world to him. Muslims believe that Allah will engage at last and he will kill all the infidels, beginning with the Jews and then the Christians, but neither of these are going to occur. But as is the case with all religious deceptions, there is an element of truth that runs through both myths. God is returning and he will welcome his family with outstretched arms. However, most of the family, in fact, all of the family that he is going to welcome will have already capitalized on the preceding two harvests, and those that will greet him on his return with Dowd will just be babies purged of their religiosity, given a second chance. And for them to have that second chance, all others must go. So as much as any, I think this was one of the reasons that Yahweh valued his relationship with Dowd. It says, you have chosen to be generous and to favor me, Yahweh. By choice, you have seen my tremendous dedication to accomplishing the mission of being a witness, and my frustration over the abuse that I have endured as a result of responding and accomplishing the goal from those who dislike and shun me, so as to lift me up on high, honoring, exalting me from the gates of death. Psalm 9:13, I should say. Dowd is the most maligned man in human history. The rabbis demean him, the Christians rob him, and he is he's been the product of identity theft, because there is no way to create the religions of Christianity and Judaism in particular. Without Judaism, there is no Islam. And without robbing Dowd of his due, those religions don't exist. And it's Jews who are responsible for all of this. And so Dowd is saying, God, you've been generous to me, even though, as I have dedicated myself, and he did, at the end of his life, he made the commitment that he would fulfill in his second of three lies, Pesach, Matz, and Bakurim. And so when he did what he was called to do, that's the point in time where the religious turned on him. And so it's God who is going to lift him up, exalting him, and eliminating those who robbed him of his dignity through Christianity and Judaism. So I wasn't the first and won't be the last to have been blindsided regarding the malicious shunning of Dowd, and yet it's hard to understand why our collective ignorance is so pervasive, especially considering how prevalent this message has been throughout the mizmor throughout the Psalms. For this concern to be emphasized in this manner by Yahowah, it's clearly something he wants us to know, so that we can do whatever is required to counter its derogatory effects. So in this case, it's hard to imagine a more difficult situation or dire result. The religious have done themselves irreparable harm by denying Dowd his due. He is no longer considered the shepherd of God's people, the beloved Son of God, or the Messiah, and yet it is Dowd who is the chosen one, the King of Kings, who will return with Yah on Kippurim to reconcile his people. Moreover, Dowd saved them, saved all of us, serving as the Passover lamb, perfecting the willing by removing our guilt on matzah. Dowd is the prophet and inspired lyricist who most endeared himself to Yah. He is the living embodiment of the covenant. And yet, tragically, Israel has reduced David to a God-forsaken star on their flag, sullying his reputation with the very symbol that Gentiles, through their religion, politics, and conspiracies, used to demonize and dehumanize Jews during the Holocaust. Making matters worse, the Kibbutz, who is the revered father of Judaism, promoted a false Messiah rather than accept Dowd. And then Maimonides made the anticipated arrival of an unknown Messiah one of the 13 principles of his religion. And to this day, rabbis deny the fulfillment of Pesach, Matzah, and Bakodim, as well as the Shabu and Teruah harvests. I'm being given a message from Rich that we've gone much longer than we would normally go, and part of it is that I didn't have the opportunity, since I'm spending all of my waking hours trying to conclude this book that is now becoming part of our Yahowah vlog program. And so I didn't look in to see how long the 9th mizmor is. So I don't know if I go another 5 minutes, do I reach the end and we have concluded that that volume, and we can move on to volume 2 of Coming Home? Or am I only halfway through and it would be the stars will come out before I finish, is the question that I don't know the answer to. So a little help in that regard would probably be a good idea. But the fact is that we do have a show tonight. It usually goes 2 hours or more. And as a man who wasn't as young as he once was, 5 hours is more than the voice can handle in a single day. So I'm going to get a okay. Okay, so I'm being told that I'm a ways from finished, that there'd be enough for an entire show to conclude the 9th mizmor if we conclude this here. And this is really a wonderful place to bid you adieu, to recognize that weather permitting, we'll be back out here on this patio on Monday. That we'll have a chance to have a really inspiring show this evening during family hour, and we can conclude volume 1 of The Voice of Coming Home early next week. I thank you so much for listening. Good day.